And if you want to learn how the planning system can unlock serious profit of your next property investment, click the link below to learn more and we can walk you through step by step how to do that. So if you want to know about permitted development rights for HMOs, or you want to get your HMO up and running as fast as possible without ever needing planning permission, or if you're just doing your research into HMOs to see what they can do and what process you need to go through, then this video is for you. So in this video we're talking about permitted development rights for HMOs and how you can get them up and running without ever needing planning permission. They're a very hot topic for property investors and tenants alike. You know, cost of living is rising, HMOs are a cost-effective way of living, and for investors they're a great way of quickly increasing your monthly income. So I've been in the planning industry for over 10 years and I've dealt with all sorts of planning applications. I was a planning officer previously myself, so I assessed applications for HMOs and PD applications for HMOs. This video is kind of breakdown of the key stages that you need to know before ever approaching the planning system with HMOs. We're going to be talking about what HMOs are, what are permitted development rights, and also what Article 4 directions are, which are very, very important. And then right at the end I'll be saving the best kind of tool for navigating the process towards the end, so make sure you stick around for that. So let's now talk about what an HMO actually is. So for the purposes of the planning process, it's important to understand exactly what an HMO is, because it's very important for understanding what you can do with permitted development rights for HMOs. So there's a lot of confusion about whether an HMO is C4 or if it's sui generis. And basically all you need to know is that for an HMO to be C4, that is the use of a dwelling house by not more than 6 people. So that's easy to understand. And sui generis is anything above that. So 7 people or more is a sui generis HMO. Now that really affects what you can do with permitted development rights, because there are permitted development rights for C4 HMOs, but there aren't for sui generis. So it's really important to understand that. So that's a good basis to start with. Permitted development rights are a hot topic for both planning and property circles. They're talked about a lot as the best way to kind of get your properties up and running. And in planning circles, they're kind of a quick way to get permission for things. So essentially what permitted development rights are works or development or changes of use that you can do without the need for planning permission. Now, they all come from a document called the General Permitted Development Order, and I've done a video on exactly what that is. It lists out all the different types of development that you can do without planning permission, and that includes anything from rear extensions, roof extensions, side extensions, and then also permitted development rights for HMOs. So the permitted development right for HMOs is that you can change the use class from C3 to C4, and what that means is you can change the use class from a house, which is the use of a dwelling house by a single tenant or single occupier or single family, to C4, which is, as I said before, is the use of a dwelling house by not more than 6 people. So that's the permitted development right, and you can also do it in reverse. So you can do from C3 to C4, you can also do C4 to C3, and vice versa. So that's what you can do with permitted development. That is the permitted development right for HMOs. The next step will be walking you through whether or not you can benefit from that permitted development right for the HMO that you're looking at. Now that we know what the permitted development rights for HMOs are, we need to figure out whether or not we can use it. And that's where an Article 4 direction comes in place. It's talked about a lot, but essentially Article 4 directions prevent certain types of permitted development from being used in a certain area. A common misconception is that Article 4 directions stop all permitted development rights, but that's not the case. So Article 4 directions only restrict certain things, and it's down to the local area. The reason why they get put in place is because certain PD rights create issues at the local level. So whether that's, for whatever reason it is. So that's why there are certain Article 4 directions to prevent things like rear extensions, or the big one is the removal of the change of use from commercial to resi. That's a very popular Article 4 direction that's been put in place, particularly in places like London. So an Article 4 direction, like I say, prevents certain permitted development rights. So it may be that if you have an HMO, you could benefit from permitted development rights. So if you have a house and you want to convert it into an HMO, it is possible that you could do that under permitted development rights even if an Article 4 direction is in place. So you just need to find the Article 4 direction that affects your area and find out exactly what it says, because it may not be that it may be that you can still benefit from it. Now, it may also say that you have to that the Article 4 erection is prevented, so then that means that you then need to get planning permission for it. So this stage of the process is really, really important. The other thing to remember with Article 4 erections is, if one is in place for, say, to residential to an HMO, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't get permission for it. So it does mean that you need to go and get planning permission, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't get permission for it. Essentially, what local councils are trying to do is bring in a level of control into that type of development. So it just means that they can demand and negotiate certain things around the application that you can't do with permitted development, because permitted development is black or white. You basically can do it or not, and then there's no benefits for the local council. A local council then puts in an Article 4 erection in place, and that allows them to secure certain benefits, let's say things like cycle parking or contributions for affordable housing or contributions for local public realm improvements, that kind of thing. So it's not necessarily the case that Article 4 erections prevent you from getting planning permission. You need to get planning permission for HMOs. Usually it's for one of two reasons. One, I've talked about already, is whether or not your site is covered by an Article 4 erection. If an Article 4 erection is in place affecting the change of use from residential to C4, an HMO, then you need to apply for planning permission. The other case is whether you're applying for an HMO of 6 people or 7 people or more, which is sui generis, because there are no permitted development rights in place for that. Now, in the first instance, if an Article 4 erection is in place, generally speaking, that makes it quite hard to get permission, because the council has put in place controls to prevent the number of HMOs going on in their area. So the next step is to look at the policies within the local area for HMOs. When HMOs are very prevalent in a local authority, not more often than not, most cases, there is a policy specifically on HMOs. And generally speaking, what they'll say is it will be to do with density and to making sure that HMOs don't take up all of the housing stock. So they'll put in things like cannot be more than X amount of HMOs in this local area. If it gets above that, then all planning applications will be refused. So that's where checking planning policies is really important. Now, in the case of an HMO of 7 or more people, the same thing applies. So if you apply for planning permission, you're then bound by the planning policies in that local area. So you need to check the policies for exactly the same thing. Just check whether or not the area is saturated. And then in the policies, it will also tell you what the what the requirements around such like an HMO like that is. It's a kind of at this stage that it's probably a good idea to get a planning consultant, but all these steps that I've outlined in this video already will kind of give you the basis to research whether or not you should even go ahead with purchasing an HMO, because at this, by the point you've got a planning consultant, you've already bought it. So having this kind of information at your fingertips to understand whether or not you can get planning permission for a new HMO is really, really valuable, and it will save you, planning consultants aren't cheap, so it will save you a lot of money. So hopefully the kind of steps outlined in this video will kind of help that. So the key things to know are what permitted developments are for HMOs. That's C3 to C4 and C4 to C3, so that you can change the use of a house to an HMO of not more than 6 people. That's key. Anything above 6 people is sui generis and you need planning permission. The next stage in the process is to understand what an Article 4 direction is and what specific permitted development right that Article 4 direction is preventing. You can benefit from permitted development rights for HMOs even if a Article 4 direction is in place. And then the last step is, if you do have restrictions in place, then you will need to apply for planning permission, and the steps I've outlined on things like checking the planning policies in the local area will give you a fair understanding as to whether or not you can get planning permission for your HMO. An additional step to this is that if you're looking at a property that is already an HMO, then obviously none of this change of use issues applies, but what you do need to check is lawful use of that property. So you need to do your research and due diligence to make sure that in terms of planning that that property has the benefit of operating as an HMO. Those are the permitted development rights for HMOs. If there's anything in this video that you want me to explore more on, or maybe if I look, it might be helpful if I look at a case study for an HMO, maybe someone that's got planning permission for that, just leave a comment in the comments below, and I'll do a video of that, and I can kind of walk you through step by step how that process went about and how that person got planning permission for that. So let me know in the comments if you want me to do that, or if there's any other strategy regarding HMOs in the planning sense that you'd like me to do more on, then please leave it in the comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.